Hey guys, today I'm going to try to survive an extremely long drought as the Ironteeth. Just because they're probably the easier faction to do it on. We'll do it on the lakes because I've never played that map before. Starting food will be 90, same as on hard. 17 days will probably be the max for temperate, that is what it is on normal. 5 days for the minimum, that's what it is on hard. 5 to 1,000 days for drought duration, and 5% for 20 cycles is the handicap. So for this first cycle, that'll be a max of 50, and then it'll increase by 50 every subsequent drought. We'll name our settlement Gambler's Grace because 5 to whatever duration is going to be the droughts, and that could save or kill us at any point. So looking around the map, the first thing that's apparent is there are a ton of lakes. It earns the name. What becomes apparent immediately after, though, is that there is no real change in elevation. So anywhere that would be a nice place to set up a reservoir really won't be, because there's no way to get the water up to the heights of the, well, valley walls. We're just kind of stuck with the water level we have. And as you see, we make it 12 days before getting the 3-day warning. So this is actually one of the longest temperate seasons we could have gotten. And that gave us enough time to get, well, our farms are basically ready to go. And we have a decent supply of water. Now, beavers consume 2 water a day, give or take. So a 50-day drought being the worst we could expect means that we can at least save 1 beaver. And that's just with the water we have now. We'll try to get more as time goes on. And the main way to do that is going to be to try to rush a dam at the last moment. We got that second staircase, so we'll have wood. You'll notice all the wood's gone in our starting area. So yeah, that could have been handled a little bit better. I always seem to find myself in a rush to build dams at the end of temperate cycles. I honestly just always think other things are a priority. Here you'll see, right as the dry season starts, we have 1 block unfinished. So that's not great. I made a quick Google sheet with the water and food that we have. We can save 1 beaver. To save everyone would need over 1,000 of each, and that's just not happening anytime soon. That being said, we did get, we got a decent amount of food. We can save 1 beaver, so it's not the end of the game. And that stat doesn't include any water outside of storages. So if we do finish the dam, and it looks like we're going to, we didn't manage to get floodgates, unfortunately, so we only save half a layer of water. Now, one thing, we do have a forester now. That is going to be the next priority once we get through this cycle. I really didn't want to spend any of the wood that we have or any of the planks that we managed to get on other things and then find out that I don't have enough for that. But anyway, we see we have some lakes to the south. That is a pretty big lake, but I don't really want to build stairs around it. We're basically at the edge of what we can build, so we'd have to destroy that. However, up to the north there's a smaller lake, and it's surrounded by trees and berries. We managed to get enough food and water to save 4 beavers, so we can send the rest up here and really just hope that they'll die of old age before they die of thirst or hunger. Which really is everyone's goal, to at least an extent. So there we go, we've set up a little village up there. We're gathering as much food down here as we can. Food is not going to be the critical factor, which is good because these guys are kind of going hungry despite their berry bushes. Berry bushes, of course, not something we're going to be able to find anywhere else on the map pretty much after this drought. Yeah, so it takes something like 22 days for water to empty if it's not being used. These guys are managing to get their farm complete and get their harvest in, so at least they're not going to starve to death. And as you see, the water's all gone from down here, which, we expected. We anticipated that. There was no way to avoid it. But we can at least build the people who survive, or the beavers who are still alive, a house, and make it so that they can at least get some bonuses for quality of life, now that there really isn't that much of a rush for them. And they do have an inventor. We can really just do science as we wait. We're going to have a bit of a lumber drought, or timber famine, whatever you want to call it. So that is going to be a limiting factor moving forward, but we definitely have a very small population. And looking around the map, I mean, there are some trees that we're going to be able to take, and we are close to some metal, so that'll help long term. But ultimately, timber is going to be a resource we are in need of. And here you see they ran out of water up here. They did cut down as many trees as they could, and we can at least try to use their storage. But a maybe more productive thing to do is going to be to use the labor of the beavers we still have to try to build a little dam at the fork in the river. If we're able to redirect this flow of water, maybe not next cycle, maybe not the one after that, but at some point we're going to need that additional water. And well, you know, we saved the labor then by using the labor we have now. And realistically, our population probably isn't going to get this high for a very long time. One of the benefits of being the Ironteeth is we can just pump out population in large numbers when we need it, and that's going to help us going forward. As you see, we've made some progress on that dam, and we're building a second one. But yeah, so we are constructing more breeding pods so that we will be able to jumpstart our population at the end of this cycle, and it is coming up pretty quickly. We'll be skipping ahead quite a bit just because there's a lot of downtime. And you see we have a lot of beavers up in this top area. In part that's to get the lumber, but mainly it's because I ran out of water, and this area is slightly close to the flow. So my plan was, I could just tell you guys it was to get the lumber, and it was, but I was hoping to get the water just a smidge quicker to avoid anyone dying of thirst now that the wet season is upon us. But something you'll notice pretty quickly, and something I noticed about at this point, is that the water flow is going to block off and flood our water gatherer around the exact same time it puts water in the lake in front of it. So yeah, that plan didn't work. We have to run everybody down. At least we did manage to secure the wood. But we'll kick these on, and nobody is dying of thirst in the wet season or temperate season, so that is a plus. Overall though, I'm pretty sure the first cycle is the hardest. We're going to go ahead and get our breeding pods running. I would prefer to do that, you know, before, but it is what it is. And now we have our forester operating, and we are going to get some berry bushes so that we can keep having beavers. Our farms are operating, we are gathering water, and we're just ready. It's day 4. Most of our beavers are adults, but a lot are youths. And here we see we have 4 youths right when we get that 3-day warning. So that wasn't great, and once again we don't have our dam built. And right as the drought comes, right as it comes, and it's going to be 55 days, we build it and trap a beaver on the other side. And it's only 1 block high, so we just get that tiny reservoir. All of these lakes are just going to drain. And yeah, we can't destroy this to get that beaver out because we only have dams at the bottom of this. And as you see, the water level just drains rapidly, and it is gone. Over 40 days left. At least we can try to keep our maples alive and admittedly replant some berries, since we didn't really plan for that. And yeah, we can send beavers up to this northern area, and in fact we kind of have to. Once again though, they do not have enough water to survive, but we build them a house so they can at least be comfortable, and an adventure so that they can help beaver society progress into the future. And they'll be doing that down here as well. So it isn't great, but at least some of them will survive. We are able to get a stream gauge, and really all it's going to be able to tell us is that we're out of water. As you can tell by the color, there's not much left, and we've got 33 days left in this drought. We did grow a couple maples, but that's not going to be enough to sustain us. We do have more water than we need, I'm fairly sure. So what we can do is do something kind of gamey. It's often considered a bit of a cheat, but a 1 block reservoir you see all the green area. It does such a good job that it is considered game breaking, and I agree. And in the future I'll try not to use these, but for this run, that's pretty much all we've got. Going forward a bit, we are kicking back up our breeding pods. We only have 3 days left. We've got a pretty decent amount of water. We've got trees, and the water comes in, and we're basically fine. We're out of water again, but it's not nearly as much of an emergency. We've got 2 adults, 3 youths. We're going to just pump up our numbers as much as we can. Once again, I prefer to do this earlier in the cycle, but we just didn't have enough water stored. So our goal for this cycle is mainly going to be to replace these dams down here with floodgates. We will store double the water and all the water in that upper area. And yeah, we've got trees, we've got pretty much everything. We just need a workforce, and they are basically all youths at this point. So it's a little bit of a gamble destroying our bottom facilities, our bottom dams, but as long as we have a decent wet season, it's not going to be an issue. And yeah, we'll go ahead and turn the breeding pods off just because it's a little bit too much of a gamble to try for a second batch. But overall, I think we are in a much better position than we were before. Granted, our population is almost entirely babies, and we got the 3-day notice. So honestly, at this point I was thinking, even though we have that great northern reservoir that we didn't have before, I was worried that I had basically killed everybody. But we've got a lot more time to get these floodgates up than we ever have in the past. And we do have 3 adults. That's not much, but 3 adults to build that last floodgate, that's something we can easily do. We have timber because we kept building the maples, or growing the maples over the drought, thanks to that 1x1 reservoir. And we have farmland. We haven't really set up the farms yet because we have enough food to get to the point where we can worry about it later, essentially. And that's really what we need to do. So yeah, kind of terrible. A lot of baby beavers, very few adults for a very stressfully short temperate season. But with the completion of this floodgate alone, we've doubled our reservoir. With that reservoir in the top, we've probably quadrupled it. So yeah, we're building some staircases to provide easier access to the other side of the river, and just building up our infrastructure, getting our farm ready, and just preparing for what is admittedly a potentially 150-day drought. So in the worst case, we'll go through all of our water reserves very quickly, but hopefully not too quickly that we can't get at least 300 water. So yeah, it's a bit of a gamble, and really that's what this society was founded on. So not the worst thing, not the best. We're going to start moving people over to the farms, to the water, just try to get any amount of crops, but really double down on getting water. Anything that we can't store right now that just flows downstream is lost forever. And we do have a little bit of an issue with flooding. But look at that, a 2-day dry season. I wasn't actually sure going in if the handicap affected the minimum length of dry seasons, but it looks like it does. And everyone gets the bonus for having wet fur, which makes sense. So yeah, this is really the moment, I think, where it kind of turned around. Because if that had been a 150-day drought, although I'm sure we would have made it, it would have been pretty brutal. And I didn't really touch on it too much, but before this cycle, we did have beavers die of thirst and hunger, I believe. But now we can kick the breeding pods back on, maybe not to get more beavers, but a few. We build our water wheels all the way across the river so they actually function. And yeah, we'll turn them off so we don't get too many beavers. We are getting quite a bit into cycle 4 now. But look at this water storage. We've even got large water storage tanks. We are just flooding this area with small tanks. We're not really focusing on food production, but we don't really need to. We've got this extra reservoir. We've got gears. We've got lumber mills. Water is the key resource, and we're getting just tons of it compared to what we've managed to have before. So because we basically skipped that drought, we're now looking at a potential 200-day drought going forward. And here you see we've popped up our levees or our floodgates all the way, and we're ready to just kind of meet this new potentially 200-day drought with a full top reservoir. So we start putting our deep water pumps up so that they can actually gather from this lake. And yeah, altogether I am fairly confident, and we'll just see how long it is. And 124 days, that's a bit more than I guess the average for this, but we already have enough water for 3.5 beavers. We don't have the 3,500 approximate to keep our whole population going, but you know, beavers don't live 120 days. Their life cycles will end much before that, and then we can drop down to 1 or 2 beavers. So with that in mind, and with the fact that that calculation doesn't include our storages, you know, it's 108 days until the end of the cycle, and we still have a full bottom storage. We're able to get scavenger flags, start gathering metal. We're able to really start looking forward to the future. We do end up having to build another water dump just because, you know, I did ignore getting food. And so yeah, that is a little gamey, and it really does lower the challenge. So in the next run, I'm thinking I'm going to be doing this as the folk tales. So I won't be able to just burst the population up. I won't be able to get engines. And depending on whether or not it will kill everybody, I may avoid using those 1x1 reservoirs. But at any rate, we do get an engine up. It takes us most of the duration of the drought. And as you see, our population drops down to 3. I figured that is the minimum viable population. We do start getting it back up near the end of the cycle just because we had so much extra water. And you see, we're just loading the area up with breeding pods. So yeah, with the engine done, the next step is to build, well, what the engine can actually power. Now that we're not relying on beaver power, we've essentially tripled, or I guess increased 5 times over our production speed. We do end up stopping the breeding pods, but look at that. We've got a population of 16 beavers that are going to be going into this next cycle. We've got trees, and it's about this point I realize we don't really have any food. 48 food and 16 beavers essentially means that we're going to run out of food before we're able to build our crops up. So the drought does manage to come actually, and you'll see we have more than 50 food. However, one thing I didn't really consider is that that's not actually where any of the beavers are. Our additional food is actually in that storehouse area. So I go ahead and send all of the baby beavers. They eat all of it but 2. So that's not ideal, but at least we're not going to have any kids starving to death. And the cycle is short as well, so that is just another strike against us. And I'll tell you, at this moment I feel like I completely wasted the temperate season. We do have a large population, but they're all just starving and not very productive. We do finally manage to get food, and it's going to be, what, an 8-day cycle, which is more than half or less than half of what it could be. But we get dynamite, and I find out we can't put it another layer down. Now my plan was to dig this down 6 levels so we could maximize our reservoir, but it turns out, I didn't look at this, we're at the bottom of the map. So yeah, focusing on explosives to the detriment of all other research doesn't really help at all. And here we are hitting the dry season, and it is 180 days out of a maximum 250. So it could have been worse, but it is certainly not great. That being said, we are able to utilize our reservoirs fairly well, and we'll just kind of jump ahead a little bit. We only have 166 days left by the time we lose our main reservoir, and this one is almost completely full. I've been channeling water into it. A lower surface area means we lose less to evaporation. We're hopefully going to lose none to dehydration. And look at that, we've got all these large storage capacity things. We've got tons of water, 2,400 practically. A lot of storage for food. We're going to try to not ever run out of food again. And yeah. So over time we let our population naturally lower. You'll see everyone died of old age, which I honestly consider a success at this point. Moving forward, we start building a golem part factory. We have our smelters done. And you'll see this drought goes by pretty quickly because there's very few beavers doing anything. I do discover that beavers get injured extraordinarily quickly in golem assemblers. So even just using them takes a while, but we finally have Coghead number 1. Our first golem with 79 days left in the dry season. Now, I had kind of expected that once we get our first golem out, the challenge would be over. I didn't realize that they need energy, and I don't have enough beavers to actually get science at a reasonable rate. So yeah, we have to get a charging station, which we do manage to do. And then of course golems don't work in many facilities outright. You have to research that. So we do build a number cruncher, an Ironteeth exclusive. It gives us 10 science every hour, which basically means that we can just let that run from our engines. And as you'll see, we have 14.5 days left in the dry season, and we're just mass producing beavers. A little odd to say, but that's how the faction works. So we have a population of 15 already, and we're just going to try to get these as close to full as they can so that we don't have this issue going forward. And we've got food, making real sure that we do, and about 500 water left with the dry season just about to end. Now, yeah, overall, I'd say a fairly successful lead up into Cycle 5, or into Cycle 6 that would be. And unfortunately, Coghead number 1 does not make it. He makes it 70 days. We do get some use out of our explosives just to increase the size of this reservoir a little bit. And the drought ends. We've managed to live. We've got 16 beavers, which is the highest our population has ever been, even though we're something like 300, 400 days into the game. And yeah, here you see our society is thriving. Food, water, tons of beavers on pumps. We're building a massive amount of large storage tanks. The cycle is 15 days. Between 5 and 17 is the range, so we've been getting extraordinarily lucky with our temperate cycles. You'll see we have multiple engines. We're just producing industry, freeing up beaver labor. We managed to flood our lower banks a little bit, but you know, better to have more water than less. And then the dry season is a little bit shorter than the max. 300 days would have been the max. But with the amount of water we have, and the fact that we're getting pretty close to golems, I don't think we're going to have any problem at all. Jumping quite a bit forward to when we're out of water basically everywhere, most of it we did just throw into our storages. We are picking up our industry. We've got golem assemblers, golem parts assemblers, but more importantly, we are starting to operate them with golems. And that really saves us a tremendous amount of time. 2 golems in the golem assembler. We still have to mess with our engines directly, but we've got 3, 4 now. We've got more engines. We're keeping up on our power. And the only real issue is just swapping the golem assembler or the part factory between the various parts and trying to do it somewhat efficiently, and manually using the engines. So I've made this little engine sector, district hub, I suppose. And the idea is we're just going to build all the engines we'll ever need up here, and a single hauler and a single distributor. The distributor will bring wood up, and the hauler will just put it in each of the engines as needed. We expand our temperate area, putting down just tons of maple trees, as really the limiting factor that we have now, as you can see, is wood. But we get that sorted out and add a control tower, and that'll boost the efficiency of our little industrial hub here. Everything fits within it except for that little bit on the other side of the river, and that of course means that we need more power, which we continue to build, and more power feeds into more power, which feeds into more industry. And that means that we can start building more parts assemblers so that we can get just a greater throughput, which of course needs more power, which feeds back to getting more golem parts. And now we have a dedicated factory for each, and they produce twice as quick as assemblers, so we get a second assembler. We decide to take this moment to make our beaver's hut a little bit nicer, so actually adding literally anything to make their quality of life go up. And that shoots it up from about 7 where it's been resting to 12, and we're not even done with a good portion of it. We even get a bell. So yeah, overall it is a very prosperous time for the 5 beavers that we actually managed to keep. And we even go so far as to get rid of some of our cropland, put wheat down. We already have potatoes, and we managed to subsist off of this very small farm area just because our population never really grew. And with all that settled, we start building a massive reservoir with golem power. We've got 126 now. The population stays around there. And once again, cycle 7 starts, and we haven't actually finished the reservoir all the way, and it becomes a racing against time. We also have a little pumping station over here, and then we're going to have a large storage area. So the idea is basically to just fill the reservoir up and then pump it dry as soon as possible so we lose as little as possible to evaporation. And also to overflows, which we try to prevent as much as possible. And we do actually manage to get the reservoir up to 6 blocks high. That being said, as you can see, there's a bit of an overflow, and it overflows right where all of our pumps are, so all the efficiency is basically wasted, and the map is as green as it will ever get for the rest of the game, ideally. But yeah, you can see our settlement has expanded quite a bit. We've got tons of deep water pumps, even though they can't really reach that deep, and our robots will be filling them up. Here you see our full reservoir as the slightly less than 300 day dry season begins, and this could be up to 350. So yeah, I mean, not the worst, and we have so much water that it really doesn't even matter anymore. We've got tons of golems pumping. They are just completing a great draining of the sea. Look at that water storage, 34,000 water already, and it just gets higher and higher. Now we haven't cleaned out the entire bottom of the reservoir, so we're not really getting the full 6 depth everywhere, but it's really good enough. So with that in mind, I start a little side project. We managed to get our beaver happiness up to about 16, but that's not enough anymore. We have all the water in the world. As you see, we have all the maples in the world. When we build paths to new areas, we have to put power alongside, so I'm just digging it underneath. And here we have the magnum opus of this run, a little area with flowing water. It takes a little bit to actually get that working. I have to add dams to the back. But just like that, we have all the monuments. We have a temple. We've got a row of trees to hide all the industry. And we can go ahead and send our 6 beavers on their long route into the garden. And with 40-something thousand water, we're easily going to make it through the end of this dry season. I believe it would take a maximum of something like 111,000 water to make this area sustainable for a 1,000-day drought, but that is imminently doable, even with the reservoir we have now not fully drained out. And look at that, we've got the beavers at maximum happiness, and here they are, enjoying their garden despite the ravages into the environment around them from tremendous droughts. And since they're the Ironteeth, we are able to control their population by just having a single berry bush, which will be operated by a golem outside of the town, and that will keep their population at a sustainable level. Golems are providing food, and all the amenities they need are already built up. We'll take one final look. We've managed to lower the reservoir to the full 6th depth through a tremendous amount of explosives. So that should be able to get us up to the reservoir capacity we need. And our main city has grown tremendously. Thank you very much for watching.